What's going on, friends? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. It is Wednesday. Happy Hump Day to all those who celebrate. I'm in a good mood, sort of. I'm in a good mood because I got my kid with me and he's going to be hanging with his cousins, and I can't wait for Thanksgiving and stuffing my face with stuffing. Love stuffing. Not so happy about Syracuse basketball. As always, I appreciate your support, by the way. Here at Syracuse Central, we focus on Syracuse basketball, football, and recruiting in both sports. And if you're so inclined, hit that subscribe button and drop me comments about what you want to hear about. And so, I mean, what can I say? Syracuse basketball is out in Las Vegas, the Sin City, at the Players Era Festival, and they're 0-2 so far. Um, and we're going to talk about the Kansas game first because that was the more recent one. But it's like, on the face of it, you think, okay, Syracuse, minus Donnie Freeman, and we'll get to Donnie in a minute. Minus Donnie takes Houston, the number 2/3 team in the country, to overtime, lose by 4 points on Monday. So you're thinking, oh yeah, so Kansas is unranked. They're coming in with a couple losses. Their best player, Darren Peterson, is out. Syracuse should win, right? I don't know. I felt that, but then, like, in the back of my head, I was also like, well, are they going to have a letdown? Like, Kansas just recently, again, had a couple losses. They lost to Duke. I think they lost to Carolina earlier in the season, too. Um, Kansas did beat Notre Dame in their first game at the Players Era. So, look, Syracuse lost. They were awful shooting the ball, and they got crushed on the boards. Um, I think Kansas at one point was up to 13-point lead. Let me make sure I got this right here. Largest lead, largest lead, largest lead. Sorry, I don't remember all these things. I'm old. All right, not seeing it here. I think it was 13. But Syracuse cut it down. They cut it down. I think they got it down to 2 like in the second half. I think it was like maybe 52-50 or something like that. Um, you know, uh, what can I say? Syracuse, they were they were so bad shooting the ball. Look at this. Look at these numbers. They shot 31.7% from the field, 23.3% from three, 56.5% from the free throw line. Their free throw shooting is just ridiculous. Now, one thing I will say is they only committed 2 turnovers, which is like pretty freaking good. But they scored 60 points. They lost 71-60. Tyler Betsy, for the second straight game, led them in scoring. Not that he shot great either. Then again, no one really shot great other than William Kyle III because he shoots everything around the rim. Um, yeah, it just was. They got got out rebounded 49-29, 49-29. Like, and certainly Kansas, a good rebounding team, and if Syracuse isn't shooting well and Kansas is rebounding, especially on the defensive end, they're going to get a lot of boards. But still, you can't expect to win a game when you are minus 20 on the boards. But, Syracuse had 9 points off turnovers. Kansas had none. Neither team had a lot of bench points, fast break points, not a lot of that either. But, it really just came down to, for me, it came down to rebounding and shooting. Kansas had 15 assists, or excuse me, 15 turnovers. Syracuse only got 9 points off those turnovers. They didn't have a lot of fast break points. They had two. So, that's something that they've really done well in terms of turning teams over, getting out in transition, getting easy buckets, manufacturing points, especially when the shots aren't falling in the half court offense. But that just didn't happen on Tuesday. And so, it's obviously a bummer. I feel like Syracuse, after nearly beating Houston, and if they had shot their free throws well against Houston, they would have beat Houston. But after nearly beating Houston and showing a lot of fight, I feel like the game against Kansas was kind of a letdown, and maybe that was to be expected. Is what it is. I just think without Darian Peterson, it was a prime opportunity to beat even though Kansas isn't ranked right now, I'm sure Peterson comes back and they do well in the Big 12, they'll be ranked at some point again, and they're a powerhouse program. Won the title in 22, and they're a good team, talented team. So it was kind of a bummer. Anyway, we're gonna move on to Houston. So that was Monday night, And Syracuse found itself down 11 with like what 3 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, and they fought back, and William Kyle III even had a shot at the end of regulation to tie it up, and it got blocked. Some people say maybe he got fouled, but they took Houston won in overtime. They dominated in overtime, but like I said, they're the number 2/3 team in the country, national runner-up a year ago, and Syracuse on a neutral floor basically played them even. And I'm not saying there are moral victories and all that nonsense, because there aren't. They lost the game. But they still showed a lot of fight, and I think they impressed a lot of people. And then I feel like, again, the Kansas game was just a letdown. But, they only got out-rebounded by Houston's a really good rebounding team, and they only were down 6, 49-43. But, again, the main problem, one problem was they couldn't stop Emmanuel Sharp or Milos Uzan. They both had 26 points. You can't go 12 of 29 from the free throw line. 12 of 29. 8 of 31 from 3. 27-63 from the field as a whole, 43%. I mean, that's not awful. It's not great. Obviously not great. You want to be shooting around 50% from the field as a whole. But 25% from 3, 41% from the free throw line. Kyan Anthony was 4 of 9. Betsy, 2 of 4. Starling, 0 of 3. God, that hitch he has in his shot, it drives me nuts. But, Betsy had 16 points. Sadiq White, who's playing for Donnie Freeman, or starting in place of Donnie Freeman. Obviously, Betsy's getting a lot of minutes, but Sadiq White, he didn't. I think he had 9 points in the Houston game, or excuse me, the Kansas game. Let me just double check that. Yeah, 9 points. But in the other game, he didn't do much. Against Houston, he had 2 points, 4 points. Excuse me, 4 points, 4 boards. But Betsy looks, pretty solid. Nate George against Houston had 6 turnovers. They had 13 turnovers. So it's weird. Like, I feel like there's been a bunch of games where Syracuse has had like 7-5. This one against Kansas, 2 turnovers. So less than 10, noticeably fewer than 10, which is good. And then they've had a few other games where they had 13 or 14 or whatever. So, taking care of the ball, they just want to be consistent there. But look, they played. It's just frustrating because it's like the what if game. It's like they should have beat Houston. Houston had 21-14 edge in points off turnovers, 21-12 edge second chance points. You knew that would probably happen with like offensive rebounding and stuff like that. Syracuse had a big edge in bench points with Betsy. Syracuse had an edge in paint points, which is, Houston's a pretty physical team. Look, they played pretty even. It's just sucks. It sucks because they really should have won that game. I mean, they lost by 4 in overtime, and they shot 41% from the free throw line on relatively high volume. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And the effort, the fight, I was super proud of. Just the free throws. I mean, this is going to kill them all season long. I mean, you cannot shoot like that from the free throw line. I want to see here. I'm just going to look this up while we're talking here. See if they've updated their stats. So Syracuse is... No, they haven't updated it. Okay, no, never mind. I was just curious what Syracuse is shooting collectively from the free throw line. It's got to be bad. All right. So I talked about this on Monday with like kind of my sense, and we hadn't gotten official word and till later that day, obviously. But as it turns out, Donnie Freeman's not playing the Players Era Festival, and he had this boot on his foot, and then it was on the social media, and then it was taken down. And I guess the bottom line with Donnie is, I feel like I read somewhere that it's not necessarily like this boot and all this isn't necessarily the same injury, quote unquote, as last year's. I don't want to misspeak here, but I feel like I read that somewhere. It doesn't, like, regardless, like, I'm just concerned. Is he injury prone? I mean, he only played 14 games last year, and he's off to a great start this year, leading the team in scoring, and now he's out. I guess we'll just see. If it's just, he's out for these 3 games that the players are a festival in Vegas, that's one thing. But then they got Tennessee coming up. They got other tough games coming up. And I'm sorry, they need Donnie Freeman if they're they need to be at full strength to be even close to a potential tournament team, in my opinion. I'm not saying that Betsy, he's going to get his minutes, and if he's shooting well, that's great, and Sadiq, but they need Freeman. It's the, so I'm a little concerned. I guess I'm not like overly concerned. Let's see how the rest of the Vegas trip goes, and they play again on December 2nd, Tuesday, December 2nd, so he's got time to continue to heal or rehab or whatever it is he's going to be doing. But long term, if he's out, that's a problem. So, and it just would really suck, like, if this season, I'm not saying gets derailed. I think they got more depth and more talent than last year, but Donnie only played in 14 games last year. JJ missed 7 games. JJ's already missed a little time this year, and Betsy was out of game. He's obviously back, and Freeman's out. And I know injuries are part of sports, and Syracuse isn't like the only program that has to deal with it, but I just feel like when this team's got everyone, then again, they nearly beat Houston on a neutral floor without Donnie. So I'm not saying they're better off without Donnie, but they've shown that they can hang with really good teams without him. So we want him back sooner rather than later, but we'll see. I hope it's just he's not like the kind of player where he's just got, injury struggles, consistently, because I would just feel bad. He seems like a good young man, good kid. Sucks. All right, we'll see. We'll keep posted on that. And then finally, just going to do a little recruiting nugget here. So, there's there's showcases throughout the year involving basketball academies and prep schools and others, whether it's in the EYBL Scholastic or some of the other prep leagues, like Duron Rippey this past weekend, along and obviously Syracuse isn't in the mix for him anymore, but just to give you an example, like his team, Blair, was part of this national prep showcase. It was in New Haven, Connecticut, and it was in I don't remember, it was this weekend. It was in the last few days. I think it was this past weekend. But anyway, we're not going to talk about Duron because he's not a Syracuse recruit really anymore. But my point is that there was a lot of really good prep school teams at this showcase, and some analysts talked about some 2027 and 2028 guys that hold offers from Syracuse and were noted for their performances at the showcase. And 2 of them play on the same team. That's the St. Thomas More School from Connecticut, and that is the same school that Tyler Betsy went to. And Syracuse recruited him back in the day, and then he went to Cincinnati for a year and then transferred to Syracuse. 2027 4-star guard Patrick Oti, and 2027, I think he's a 3-star wing, DJ Hawkins. They both hold Syracuse offers, and they were both lauded for their play at the showcase, and so that's cool. And then also a 2028 4-star point guard, Mekhi White, who plays at the Brewster Academy in New Hampshire, which is obviously sent Buddy Boeheim and CJ Fair and a few others to Syracuse. And I don't think Mekhi has a Syracuse offer yet, but I believe that Syracuse is showing interest in him. Syracuse has offered 15 guys that I'm aware of in 2027, 11 in 2028. Obviously, it's still relatively, young, or not young, early on in the recruitments of those guys. 2027s are juniors, 2028s are sophomores. And then one guy that was really, named one of the top performers according to several scouts that I saw at this national prep showcase is Theo Adema, the 2027 4-star center who plays at the Cushing Academy in Massachusetts and holds a Syracuse offer, was officially visited Syracuse in September, this past September. Syracuse has been in for him at open gyms at Cushing, and he definitely seems like he's a priority for Syracuse in the 2027 class, along with Zion Green, who plays at Mount Zion Prep, and unofficially visited Syracuse in late August. And then, you want to look at like guys like Jaylon Lyons, who plays in the DMV. He's a 4-star point guard, and I know Syracuse is potentially looking to get him out for a visit. You got Clyde Walters at Overtime Elite, who might be a reclass candidate, but also could be a visit candidate for Syracuse. So, things are still kind of, we're still figuring out 2026 for Syracuse right now. But you still want to keep tabs on these 2027, 2028, and even 2029 guys in terms of offers and visits and, how they're faring. And if I hear any, concrete intel about, interest in Syracuse or list cuts and all, again, visits, I will pass it along. But we'll definitely keep focusing on Syracuse basketball. We'll get into some Syracuse football. They've got their regular season finale against Boston College on Saturday, and we'll certainly be focused on recruiting in both sports. And again, drop me comments about what you want to hear about and what you don't want to hear about. And okay, that's going to do it for today's edition. Again, it was a bummer about these first two games in Vegas, but hopefully it's still a springboard for good things to come. Kansas is a good team. Houston's a very good team. And, again, Syracuse was right there with Houston. Kansas kind of pulled away late, but Syracuse was hanging around with them for most of the game too. And so we'll see. Trying to remain positive. I still think it can be a solid season for Syracuse. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. I'm Neil Adler, your host. And if you are so inclined, hit that subscribe button. I will talk to you again on Thursday, friends. Take care. Thanks for your support.